Welcome, boom, chicka, wow, wow. Welcome to another fantastic episode of My Orgasmic Life. So today I'm very excited because this is my 100th episode, show 100. So I wanted to do something exciting for 100. And, I asked my audience, I'm like, hey, who has some ideas? And somebody had a great idea that I haven't talked about play parties. And I'm like, oh, well, that's exciting. There's so much to talk about. So that's what our special is today. Our show is on play parties. So before I get into the juicy content, I just wanted a couple different things, some housekeeping things. One, in case this is the first time you've ever spent any time with me, I'm Gaia Morrissette. I'm a holistic sexual wellness specialist. Also, that this episode was brought to you by ticklelife. For all of your sexual education and wellness needs, check out ticklelife. Yee! All right, let's get into play parties. Woohoo! I know, I'm just so excited. It doesn't take much to excite me, let's be honest. All right, so play parties. Let's get back to business here. So what is a play party? First of all, let's define that. A play party is a place where, and it's used in many different contexts, and we're going to talk about all the different types of play parties that there are. But basically the gist is that when someone says a play party, it means it's a group of people get together from some kind of sexual context to spend some time together. So that's, would be play. But instead of like a play date as kids, it's like adult playtime. And there's a group of people that are doing it. Okay, so that's kind of like the gist of using the term play parties. Now, there's different lifestyles, so there's different genres of play parties. So we'll start with BDSM. So in the BDSM world, a play party can have sexual interaction, intercourse, like actual sexual acts. Or a play party can have no sexual acts and only BDSM and impact play and power exchange and other things, but no actual penetrative or intercourse-related sexual activity. So that's what a play party would look like. Well, and I'll dive into that a little bit deeper in a second, but I just want to go through the other lifestyles. So that's the BDSM play party. A swingers play party would be couples hanging out, swapping, sharing, group sex, threesomes, foursomes, different options. But the premise is that everybody who is there as a couple, right? So that's like a swingers play party. And then you have like a house party, which is usually, it's more referred to as a house party typically, but it also sometimes is talked about as a play party. And then you have, kind of more of the orgy house party, where there can be singles, there can be couples, and it's all, different sex activities that are going on. So those are kind of like the main three types of play parties. All right, so let's come back to the BDSM play party. So at a BDSM play party, you want to find out what kind of party you're. So first of all, let's just start with this. You always want to do your research to find out what kind of party are you going to. It's kind of like you wouldn't show up to a costume party without wearing a costume, or you wouldn't show up to a regular, somebody's party without knowing if there was a theme to the party. Okay, so you just kind of look at it from that perspective. It's like, what is the theme of the party? What are you getting yourself into? What are you walking into? So that's like the first thing. All right, do your research. Don't, I highly recommend you really ask a lot of questions. So these are some of the questions that I would ask. Somebody invited me over for a play party. My first question would be, what kind of play party is it? What kind of genre are we looking at? Who's attending? So I have a good idea, what kind of people are attending. Are they swingers? Are they polyamorous? Are they kinky? Like what's happening here? Like what, because there can be crossover in all these places, right? So like, I want to know who I'm hanging out with. Also, it's really important to ask the host, what are the rules? What are the consent rules? What are the etiquettes? What are the expectations? So that you also know what you're getting yourself into. This is a really important piece because each play party is run differently. And I'll get into the logistics of what that would look like in a second, but it's really important. So that's the first rule. Your first rule of play parties is to ask questions. Who's going? What's the genre? And what are the protocols? Okay. So let's go back to BDSM. So you're at a BDSM play party, and depending on the type of party and the scenes and the people, will have a lot to do with whether or not you are either bringing your play partner, being like your, if you're dom, you're sub, if you're a sub, you're dom, and you putting on a scene and a bunch of people watching you, or somebody, which is more common, versus you just showing up and then being a part of a scene. All right, like that's, that takes a lot more negotiation and trust, and unless you know the people that are at that play party and you've played with them before and that kind of stuff, right? So first thing you want to do is find the DM, the dungeon master, and tell them, okay, I'm new to this community, or like into this, the group of people that you're at the party with. If you're new to ever being at a play party, you want to tell them that so that they can take you around and they can show you around where everything is, and how to, use the equipment, and what's the protocol of like using the equipment, and how long can you be in a seat, and how do you observe and watch people's scenes, and not interrupt those scenes? Like, what are the rules? What are the rules of engagement? And each DM will, at that play party, that's why they have a DM. They have, usually they have one or more than one who's walking around and basically making sure everybody's safe and everything's going according to, the rules, and everybody's playing by the rules, so everybody feels safe. Okay. So align yourself with the DM, find out, and also the DM can introduce you to people, right? So, a good DM will be like, so what's your things? Tell me what your things are. So that they can kind of like, because in the BDSM world, in the kink world, it's so huge what people's arousals and turns-ons and their things are. It's huge. So that is a great way of and the DM knows everybody in the community. So, they know everybody's likes and dislikes and their things. So, best rule, befriend the DM, the dungeon master, or the dungeon mistress. Okay. It's always good to know what the rules are, but here is kind of a general rule. Don't interrupt somebody playing. So you can watch, get your voyeur on, and don't make running commentary. Be quiet, because there's nothing worse than if you're in a scene, especially in the BDSM. Okay, we're still in the BDSM play party here. If you're in a scene, and you're like dropping in, and the subs dropping in, and everybody's, the people who are participating and being a part of that scene. A scene, also, when I say scene, is like the act that's happening. The grouping of people that are doing whatever they're doing is called a scene. So the last thing you want is to interrupt and pull the people out of their experience by giggling, laughing, talking, whispering, make some mental notes and then go somewhere far away if you want to talk about what you've just seen with somebody. All right. Because you don't want to be that asshat that ruins somebody's sexual experience. And that was exactly what happens when there's running commentary in the background. Okay. So that's a really good rule of like being, that's kind of good voyeur etiquette. Right? Don't be an asshat. Sorry. Okay. So, what else do I want to tell you about that? And so don't interrupt, okay? Especially in a BDSM scene. Now, let's move to like a swingers play party. Also, I didn't talk about the sex clubs. So the sex clubs also have different protocols, all right? So we have our house party, you have your sex clubs, and you have your BDSM play parties. So those are the big ones, okay? So anyways, so now let's go to the swingers, all right? We'll zip over there. Boom, chicka, wow, wow. Now, depending on, what are the rules? So you're going to, again, it's usually the host or the hostess who is going to do the kind of similar thing to the DM. Basically, you're going to connect with them. You're going to find out, okay, so what are the protocols? What are the consent rules? And so when I say consent rules, it's like, how do I engage with other people? How do I touch other people? How do I let other people touch me? These are the consent rules, right? And so different parties have different levels of that. And different situations have different levels of that. So you want to know what you're getting yourself into so that you can, A, respect the consent rules that are at that party, number one. But number two, if they're not high enough for you, like if you need more consent, a higher level of negotiation and conversation before you feel comfortable to have any sexual touch or interaction with somebody, then you need to put those protocols in place for yourself whether you're there by yourself or you're there with your partner or your partners or your lovers or whatever. Okay. So that's a really, really important piece going into that so that you feel safe and you feel good about the experience, and that you don't feel, especially if you have trauma, and this is an important piece, is that if you have a past where there's been trauma involved, then you need to have all the details so that you feel comfortable and you feel safe in your body. Okay. Now, overall, the general rule is no means no. And it's not okay to get offended when somebody says no thank you. Okay, so that's across the, that's a general rule in the swinging world, that no means no. But the level of consent varies from club to club, play party to play party, group to group. So you need to figure out what that is, your comfort level is with that, and what it is with the group. And if you need more, then it's okay for you to ask more. So for example, it's really important for me to have high consent. Like, I don't like random people touching me sexually, even if I'm like laid out and I'm, my brains are being fucked, I want somebody to ask permission to touch me. This is an important piece for me. This is a piece that makes me feel empowered and sexy, and it gives me permission to say, no, I'm not interested. And that feels really comfortable for me. But in different sexual situations, in different play party situations, sometimes that's the norm, sometimes that's not the norm. Even when it's not the norm, it's important that, so for example, in a situation where that may not be the norm, where before somebody touches you, they ask if they can touch you, or can I eat you out, or, can I finger you, or can I fuck you, or whatever it is that they're asking for. If that's not the norm, and the norm is just to kind of like, once you've kind of gotten the nod that you can just do whatever you want, then, and you need the level of consent like I'm talking about, then what you need to set up is you need to have your spotter. So your spotter's job is to make sure that if somebody's watching and wanting to engage, that that the rule, they're told what the rules are, right? Before they go anywhere near you, they've been informed what the rules of engagement with you is. And that way you can be in the throes of the sexual experience and enjoying whatever that's happening, whether that's, you're having a threesome, a foursome, a gangbang, whatever it is. Then you can really be, dropping into that experience without having to think about, oh no, somebody new's walked into the room, and are they just going to touch me, or are they going to ask me because they don't know the rules about, how to engage with me. So it's good to have a spotter. Some people have wingman. You go to a play party, have a spotter. and you can negotiate what that looks like what you need and what they need, and you can set, offset each other for being each other's spotters. Be like, okay, for the next hour, you're my spotter, and I get to, let out my inner slut. And for the next hour, you get to let out your inner slut, and I'll spot you. So that's one way of getting around if you're in a situation where there's not a lot of, negotiation periods before play engagement happens, is to have your spotter be the person that says, this is what the rules of engagement if you want to play with whoever we're talking about. Okay, so that's a really good way of doing it. Another thing about play parties is you're kind of walking around naked, and you have your towel, so you don't necessarily have pockets to put stuff. So a wonderful little trick and tip is I like to bring my tool belt. I look really hot naked. Wearing my tool belt filled with all of my orgy tools. Sex party tools. I have gloves. I have lube. I have condoms. I have my own sex toys that are for me and my body only. What else do I got in there? I got wipes in there, some, mouthwash. I mean, this is my kit, right? So you can have your tool belt, or you can have, carry something else, but you want to have your play party, survival kit. And in that survival kit is wipes, lube, condoms, gloves, sex toys, and mouthwash and gum. Oh, and deodorant. And then you're set. And a towel. You want to make sure you got your towel, that you're moving. Because, it's not okay to just kind of sit anywhere without your bottoms on a towel, okay? That's just good etiquette. As a nudist, you learn this really well, so you just kind of always have a towel, and you're all good, okay? So that's your survival kit. What else do I want to tell you about play parties? We talked about protocols and etiquette. And I think it's really important if you're a newbie and you're going together in a relationship, that you've kind of, it's really good to just go the first time. It's good to go as a voyeur, whatever genre we're talking about. Sex club, swingers, BDSM. And go as a voyeur. That's number one. And enjoy the arousal. And then if you get turned on, you know, and you want to be an exhibitionist, then, you know, depending on where you are at, so, you know, BDSM, you know, you will know what the protocols of whether it's a sex or just non-sexual a play party. You might want to play out a scene. If you're letting out your exhibitionist at, you know, swingers, you might want to just fuck each other's brains out and let other people watch and just say, you know, we're only playing with ourselves, you know, today, so that people know. You know, and so that's a good way to kind of, you know, instead of like making it more complicated by dropping in and being like, oh, we're going to do everything. Unless you have like a really, your personalities are like pretty not, like you're really good at communicating with each other. You have no jealousy whatsoever. There's no insecurities in your relationship whatsoever. I highly recommend that you just kind of, the first time you go into this whatever world, you go as a team. And if you're in a relationship, you go as a team, and you're going to just be voyeurs and watch. And then afterwards, you guys can then have conversations about what you liked, what you didn't like, you know what you're getting yourself into. And then you can talk about, where do you want to explore next? How do you want to explore that next? And I think that's a really important piece, because often I hear couples go in from being monogamous to all of a sudden dropping into a play party. There's like a zillion steps that need to be taken so that that's successful before you like, oh, we're at a play party, we're fucking strangers. Which is hot. Don't get me wrong. It's totally hot. But you want to make sure that you do certain things that you want to do to make sure that it's a successful experience for you and your partner and your relationship. Okay? So take it slow, you know, and you can just say, we're new. So if everybody's like, ooh, fresh meat. And they're all like, and you just be like, we're new. We're just voyeurs tonight. People will get it. People will sport it. Don't worry. They understand. Okay? Besides, it'll just make them want you more, because can't have you. So that the next time you come to the play party, you won't be worried about having play partners. They'll all be lining up to have time with you. Okay? So it's all good, right? It isn't like it's the only time and I think this is a really good mindset to go into any kind of situation, any kind of play party, any kind of genre, is that looking at this, that this is not your only experience. This is not your only opportunity to ever experience this. And that you can do it in stages. You can do it individually. Like you can do it slowly in baby steps so that it's like enjoyable and successful and you know, and it's an important piece. Now, this part I haven't talked about, and if you take anything away from today's show, this is the thing I want you to take away. Do not get hammered. Often what happens, first of all, in the BDSM world, it's incredibly discouraged to point out, not almost like it's like a rule. playing intoxicated, especially in BDSM, is so potentially dangerous that it's so discouraged. Okay, so in the BDSM world, whether we're intoxicated in any capacity, drugs, alcohol, whatever, because people can get really hurt if you don't know what you're doing, and if you are intoxicated, you don't really know what you're doing, and your body doesn't know what it needs. Right, and the submissive and the bottom doesn't know how to ask for what they need to prevent injuries from happening. So no intoxication. And I say this because often when we're nervous, it's kind of societally, it's kind of our default. It's our default to make sure that we, take the edge off. We take the edge off, and then we consume more, and we take the edge off, and we consume more, and our inhibitions come down. And the more inhibitions come down, the more we're like, yeah. But the problem is that because you were under the influence, you weren't really able to truly give consent. And you may end up saying yes to something that you weren't actually emotionally prepared for, psychologically prepared for, physically prepared for, and you can get yourself into situations that instead of this being this beautiful, transcendent, exploratory, amazing, earth-shattering experience, it can become harmful and filled with shame and guilt and feeling icky because you weren't able to communicate what you needed and be able to stay strong in your boundaries and ask people to respect those boundaries because you're under the influence and you're intoxicated and you can't really your brain isn't working. So even though it seems like it's really scary and really uncomfortable, don't get intoxicated. It's really easy. And if you do get intoxicated, don't play. That's just a really good rule. Just do not play so that you can feel good about the experience. Also, as a side note, when you're intoxicated, first of all, you don't make good judgment calls. Second of all, but you think they're good, but you don't. Second of all, it's not as attractive to the other people around you either. Let's be honest, overly drunk people are not sexy. They're not. They're slurring the words, they're fumbling, it's just not sexy. So this is the most important thing. All the things to talk about is important, but this one, if you manage to make sure that you are always of sound mind, then you can give consent. You will never end up in something that you are not okay with. And that's the most important part when you dive into the world of play parties, is that it needs to be this amazing possibility of exploration. And you want to make sure that it feels good and that you feel safe, and all the safety things are taken into consideration. Your physical well-being. So let's talk a little bit about how do we do safer sex in a group sex situation. All right. So this is why you want your survival kit. Okay. You want to make sure that you got your gloves, your condoms, your toys, your lubes. They go with you. Okay. Wherever you're going, they're going with you. And anybody who's playing with you, you want them to use them. So that's a really important piece. You want them to use that if it's being used on your body, right? As the owner of the vagina. Right? Now, penis owners. It's good to have your own little kit that goes with you in case somebody doesn't have their own kit, so that you always have gloves and condoms and lube. All right. Make sure that you don't cross-contaminate. So if you got one finger in one hole and make sure another finger is in the other hole, you want to make sure it's in separate hands. But two different people, each one has a hand. Don't switch them. okay? Because you can cross-contaminate, and then we have all sorts of problems with STIs and STDs and, you know, the ecosystem and all these things, okay? So just, you know, that's a good rule. This person has this hand. If you're playing with two people, this person gets one hand, the other person gets the other hand, okay? Don't cross them. You know, never go from anal to anything without serious washing, change, and always have condoms. You know, condoms. Gloves. Gloves are sexy. Have gloves on, right? Unless this is a group of people that you know really, 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 really well, and you've all been tested and you've all agreed and you all are fluid bonded, and this is like, and there's a lot of trust going on, then that's a different story. Okay. But that is because you've had trust and testing and communication and all that kind of stuff. Okay. So we always want to have gloves on when we're fingering people, putting things in orifices, right? And then it's easy. And it's easy because you just take off the glove, put on a new glove, right? The other reason we want gloves is because we have things under our nails. We got hang nails. You know, we got, you know, all this stuff. And gloves don't absorb the lubricant, so the body's lubricant, so that's also good. It helps make it nice and slippery, okay? What else do I want to teach you? Oh, yeah. So if you have your penis, okay, penis owners, all right. So you got a condom on. You're fucking one vagina. There's another vagina there. Do not go from that vagina to the other vagina. Don't do it. Okay, cross-contamination, all right? So if you're fucking one vagina, you got a condom on, take the condom off, go to the bathroom or get your wipes, wipe it all down, wipe the whole area down, put another condom on, and then you can go have sex with the other vagina, okay? So this is important about safe sex within that realm. And if other people aren't practicing that kind of safe sex, then this is where it's really important to have your spotter. Your spotter's like, hey, no, put a glove on, put a condom on, all these things, okay? So, you know, that's why it's good to have, it's always just good to bring a spotter if you're going to a play party. You know? All right, that's a lot. I think those are the big ones. Oh, actually, the last piece that I really want to talk about is what happens when you freak out or somebody breaks a rule, or when you're in a relationship. Okay, so if you go with a partner. So this is why I say the first time you go, have the rule that you aren't playing with others, so that you can see all the ins and outs and all the things that happen, so that you can conceptualize how it logistically works, and you can see it, and then you can fantasize about it, and then you can talk about it, and you can then see how each other feels about the idea of it and how you feel about it. So then it's good to have like a set of kind of rules of engagement, as I like to call them. So some couples are like, okay, no kissing. Some couples are like, okay, no, you know, ejaculation with another person. Some are like no oral sex. Some are, we always play together. Like, these are some of the rules, right? Eventually you kind of let go of a lot of those rules because it's not really a big deal, but it gives you, each time you have a set of rules and you kind of lean into those places, and then you can negotiate afterwards. How do you feel about us changing that up and exploring this differently? What it does is it allows you to kind of settle into the next layer of challenging your love paradigms around monogamy. right? That we've been programmed to believe. And so instead of like ripping it all out, you're completely raw and bare, doing it in kind of stages makes it a little bit easier to process and handle as an individual and within your relationship. So that's my suggestion, to kind of do it in layers, like in baby steps. Unless that just doesn't seem like your style of your relationship and you guys are really good at communicating and you tend to not have jealousy and all that kind of stuff, then I'd say, okay, well, you can just be like, okay, these are the ways that I'd like to explore. What are the ways you would like to explore? Okay, how can we make that happen? All right, so there's different ways of approaching it. Now, this is really, really, really important. If you're having insecurities and jealousy, you want to have a safe word, a code word, where you can just, instead of getting angry, instead of lashing out, instead of freaking out, instead of making a scene, you can just have your word, that your safe word. So in the BDSM world, the safe word, typically is red. As soon as red's said, everything stops, everything is ended, all that kind of stuff. Aftercare happens, all that kind of shit. Not shit. All that kind of stuff. That's good. Very important. In the swingers world and the sex world, you really want to make sure that you have kind of a safe word. Where one of you can say the safe word, and as soon as the other person hears the safe word, they disengage, they stop what they're doing, and they disengage, and you guys can walk away from the scene to have a conversation about what's going on, what either one of yous need. And it may be, okay, that was good, it's time for us to go so that we can process this together. It may be like, somebody is bothering me that I don't feel comfortable with. Like, there's a lot of things, but you want to have that word that when one of you say it, immediately the other person disengages whatever they're doing, and you both can go have a place where you can go have a conversation. That prevents fights, making a scene. Because that's the thing, is that it's okay to be a newbie. And in the world, in the swinging world, it's okay. Everybody understands it's new and it's not easy and blah, blah, blah. But it's not okay to air your dirty laundry and bring in everybody else, which is going to ruin everybody else's time there. So that's a really important piece, is that making a scene is not cool on any level. You're there. Set up a system that works for you guys so that you can deal with your shit, deal with the emotions that might be coming up, but you're not going to ruin anybody else's time. Okay? All right, that's a lot. So, I hope you learned lots. How to find a play party is another story altogether. So in the BDSM world, it's really important to go to your community's munch and get to know people. Once you get to know people in the BDSM world and they feel comfortable with you, then people start inviting you to, to events and to play parties and things like that. Okay. In the swinging world, you can go, depending on where you live, there's sex clubs you can go to so that you can kind of get a taste of what it looks like. And then you start to make friends. And as there's also swingers clubs where you can start to make friends. There's online swingers communities that you can join so that you can build some rapport. And like once you start to build, your own little tribe within the tribe of swingers, then, play parties, and you start to get invited to play parties and these kinds of things. The third way is, random advertising of play parties. However, if you're not new, if you are new to the world, I wouldn't recommend that because there's a lot of variables that are not controlled from that perspective. So I would prefer, it would be much better to go to a swingers club than go to a sex club, because there's people there that are making sure everybody is safe and practicing safe sex and all this stuff. And you can learn to navigate it and get the tools under your, skills under your belt before you kind of head into like a private event where anything is possible at those. Okay. All right. If you're like, oh my God, this was really hot and it really turned me on, it was really exciting and I want to explore this, but I don't know how to do this and I want some more support, you can find me at succulentliving.com for all of your, if you want to explore the BDSM realm. You can find me at empressgaia.com for all your BDSM needs. Don't forget to download my Orgasmic Life app for this podcast, so you can have me with you all the time, everywhere. All you have to do is go to Google Play Store, and you can follow me on all the social media platforms under Gaia Morrissette or Empress Gaia. And I also host, if you're like, oh, I love spending time with Gaia, of course you do. I host Ticklelife's podcast, so which is really cool. You should check it out, where we dive into talking about experts' personal stories about their sex stories and their relationship stories, and their kinks and all sorts of juicy stuff. So if you like being a voyeur, it's a fantastic podcast. Tickle.life podcast. All right, that's it. That's all. And thanks for making 100 shows possible. I'm so happy. And the last thing, I know I always say this, I always forget, but the last thing is, if you want to continue your education, I always forget to talk about this. I have a library of, I believe there's 13 courses, 13 different variations of sexy education, from sexual skill building to tantra to BDSM to relationships and non-monogamy, you name it, in the realm of human sexuality, and that is always evolving and it's always growing. So if you're like a knowledge seeker and you're like hungry to learn more, and you want to expand who you are in the sex life, that you want to have the best sex life, that you want to have the sex life that they write stories about and songs about and poetry about, then knowledge is power, baby. So you can check out my courses, my online courses, at my website, succulentliving.com, under Work With Us, online courses. All right. That's it. That's all. Bye-bye. I love you. Thanks for making 100 hot and sexy.